I was still conscious when my face hit the snow, but the cold stole the strength from my bones so quickly it felt like my body didn't belong to me anymore. I lay there on my back, staring up at the black December sky, while Christmas lights from the house shimmered above me like a cruel joke. Music drifted out from behind the closed windows, muffled laughter, clinking glasses, the low hum of people celebrating inside. My family, my husband, all of them warm with their drinks and smiles while I lay dying 3 feet beneath their glowing wreaths. I tried to lift my hand. Nothing. I tried to scream. Only air left my throat. From the second-floor window above me, I saw movement behind the curtains. A shadow, then another, and then the light snapped off. I realized they were not coming, not Mark, not my parents, and not my sister, the one who had ordered my husband to drag me upstairs and who had pushed me through the window without hesitation. As the cold wrapped itself around my spine and everything inside me slowed to a crawl, one question kept scraping through my mind like broken glass. How did my own family become the people who would rather let me freeze to death than feel embarrassed because of me? 6 hours earlier, I had been standing in the doorway of that same house, wrapped in a coat that wasn't warm enough, telling myself I could get through Christmas Eve if I just kept my head down. I had been a nurse in Seattle for years, but my right hand had been injured in an accident on shift, leaving me out of work and without steady income until my insurance appeal went through. I hated the idea of moving back home at 30, hated the thought of being seen as the daughter who couldn't get her life together, but I didn't have much of a choice. Vermont winters were merciless, and rent wasn't forgiving either. When I stepped out of the rideshare that afternoon, the air felt sharp enough to slice skin, the kind of cold that seeped through fabric and settled in your ribs. The Monroe house looked as cheerful as ever, covered in white lights, garlands drooping from the porch railings. A giant inflatable snowman bobbed in the wind near the walkway. It was the kind of picture-perfect Christmas scene that would have made any passing stranger feel a spark of warmth, but to me it felt like a set from a play I never belonged in. Before I even reached the porch, the front door swung open, and Haley appeared holding a half-empty glass of wine. Her cheeks flushed, her blonde hair curled to perfection. She smiled, but her eyes stayed flat. "Rachel, you made it," she said, like I was already late. "I told you I'd be here before 5. "Well, you know how Mom gets when she's stressed. Just try not to make tonight harder than it has to be." My jaw tightened. Same line, different year. She stepped aside to let me in, and the warmth of the house hit me like steam, thick with spices, pine, and too many expensive candles. My mother stood by the dining table arranging napkins with an intensity that could rival open-heart surgery. My father adjusted string lights along the stairway like a nervous butler preparing for royalty. Mark stood near the fireplace, still in his wool coat, scrolling on his phone. When he looked up, his expression softened in a way I used to believe. Used to trust. He walked toward me. "Hey," he said, kissing my cheek like we hadn't been drifting apart for months. "How's the hand sore?" "But manageable." He nodded, but his attention flicked over my shoulder to Haley like he was checking for her reaction. She smirked faintly, swirling her wine. I stepped further into the living room and noticed something immediately. There were no photos of me anywhere. Haley had replaced the usual framed pictures with new ones, her graduation photos, her Halloween costumes, a dozen versions of her smiling with my parents at various events. The shelves looked curated, intentional, erased. "Mom," I said, forcing a smile. "Smells amazing in here." She barely glanced up. "We have important guests coming, Rachel. Please don't touch anything with that injured hand. And try to stay out of Haley's way tonight. She's hosting." Haley beamed as if she had just been appointed queen. I swallowed irritation. "I'm fine. I just got here." "You look tired," my mother murmured almost to herself. "Just don't overdo it." My father cleared his throat but didn't defend me. He rarely did. I carried my overnight bag upstairs to my old room, pushing open the door with my shoulder. Dust clung to the windowsill. A few cardboard boxes sat in the corner labeled donations. Inside one, I recognized some of my old childhood books. They hadn't even asked me about them. When I turned, Haley was standing in the doorway without knocking. Remember, she said casually, twirling her wine glass tonight needs to be perfect. Mom's already a wreck. Just don't make her nervous. This family could turn anything into my responsibility. I ignored her and began unpacking. My injured hand throbbed the dull ache pulsing with each movement. I hated being weak around these people. Weakness was ammunition in this house. Downstairs, I heard my mother call out instructions, footsteps rushing the clatter of plates. I headed back down to help, though help wasn't really what they wanted from me. Mark and Haley were standing too close in the kitchen when I walked in. She was whispering something that made him laugh too softly, too intimately, the kind of laugh that used to be reserved for me. When they saw me, they both shifted. "What are you two doing?" I asked lightly, trying to sound casual. Nothing, Mark said too quickly. Haley was just showing me the new wine opener. A life-changing invention, Haley added with a wink, brushing past him. Her perfume swirled through the room like a warning. I busied myself with the appetizers, ignoring the tightening in my chest. My mom walked in a moment later and said quietly, "Rachel, be careful with the glasses. We want tonight to go smoothly. We don't need accidents." She didn't have to emphasize the word that way. It stung all the same. A ripple of memories pushed forward. Times from childhood when Haley broke something but blamed me and I took the punishment. Times when I tried to be small and quiet so I wouldn't upset anyone. Times when I questioned if love in this house was conditional on never being a burden. By the time the guests started arriving, the air felt as thin as a stretched rubber band. Haley greeted people with loud, charming laughter, hugging them as if she were the star of her own television special. My parents floated after her like obedient satellites. I stayed near the back of the living room, smiling politely as people brushed past. A woman I vaguely recognized approached. "You must be Rachel, the ER nurse, right? That's such meaningful work." Before I could respond, Haley appeared out of nowhere. "Oh, she's not working right now," she said brightly. "Hand injury. Poor thing drops everything these days." The woman blinked, embarrassed for me. I forced a smile but felt something sink inside me like a stone settling at the bottom of cold water. At dinner, the humiliation sharpened. I had barely sat down when my mother called from the far end of the table, "Rachel, pour the wine for everyone, will you?" I stared at the bottle, my fingers trembling slightly from strain and the weight of attention. I knew what would happen if I refused, so I stood, gripped the bottle, and started around the table. Each pour sent a jolt through my wrist. When I reached the last guest, a thin stream of wine splashed onto the tablecloth. Haley stood so quickly her chair groaned. "Rachel, can you not handle the simplest task? You're embarrassing us." The room went silent. All eyes on me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. My hand. "Your hand is always the excuse," she snapped. Mark exhaled sharply, shaking his head like he was the disappointed spouse instead of the man who hadn't touched me in weeks. I felt every molecule of air inside me collapse. I wanted to disappear and breathe and scream all at once. "Rachel," my mother said with a fragile smile, "why don't you freshen up? Haley's right. You seem overwhelmed." I shook my head. "I'm fine." "Clearly not," Haley muttered. Then Mark stood, grabbed my good arm, and said with a voice coated in false concern, "Come on, let's go upstairs." "No," I whispered. "I'm not." His grip tightened. "Don't make this worse." A stunned quiet fell over the guests. No one intervened. As Mark pulled me toward the stairs, I glanced back at the table. Haley lifted her wineglass in mock sympathy, her lips curling. The upstairs hallway glowed with warm lights, but it felt colder than the porch. Mark let go of me abruptly, his face unreadable. Haley followed behind us, steps sharp and intentional. "Why are you doing this?" I asked her. Haley's eyes gleamed with something close to hatred. "Because you ruin everything. Tonight is important. I won't let you take it from me. I didn't do anything." "You exist," she hissed. "That's enough." A chill crawled down my spine. In that moment, I didn't know she was about to destroy the window with my body. I didn't know I'd spend hours in the snow unable to move. but I knew with bone-deep certainty that something was terribly, terribly wrong. I gripped the railing to steady myself and whispered, "Haley, please, stop." She smiled the way she used to smile right before she pushed me off swings as a kid, and I felt a gust of cold air from the cracked window behind me. I didn't know it would soon swallow me whole. Under the soft glow of the hallway light, Haley stood a few feet from me, swirling the last of her wine as if she were contemplating which part of me bothered her the most. Her eyes carried the familiar sharpness I had known since childhood, the kind that looked through me rather than at me, the kind that found satisfaction in the smallest cracks in my composure. Behind her, Mark hovered in the doorway with a stiffness that suggested he wanted to leave, but knew he couldn't not when Haley still expected him to play his role. "You embarrassed me downstairs," she said finally, her voice smooth, almost bored. "You embarrassed all of us, and you don't get to ruin things anymore just because you can't control your hands." I swallowed hard. "It was an accident. I'm doing my best." Her lips curled. "Your best has never been enough." I took a slow step back, instinct guiding me, even though the window behind me whispered danger. "Haley, you're drunk. Let's just go back down. We can finish dinner quietly." She laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Quietly? There's never anything quiet about you. You show up when no one asked you to. You take up space that isn't yours. You cling to this family like you belong here." Mark shifted. A small, uneasy movement. For a moment I wondered whether he'd speak up, but he didn't. He rarely did when it came to Haley. My chest tightened. "I came home because I needed help while I recover. That's all. I'm not trying to take anything from you. Everything's always about you needing something," Haley said. "Attention, sympathy, second chances. You drain people, Rachel. You always have." I stared at her, stunned by how casually she spit out the words she must have rehearsed for years. "What are you talking about?" A flash of anger cut through her expression. "Do you think Mom and Dad were thrilled to have you back? They just didn't know how to tell you no. They never do. They fold for you. They move mountains for you. And then you never leave." I blinked, not sure whether the sting in my chest was shock or grief. "They haven't made me feel that way at all." "That's because they pity you," Haley said. "Your injury, your job, your marriage, you're like an abandoned puppy no one wants but feels guilty saying no to." I opened my mouth, but she raised a hand, stopping me. "And Mark," she added with a cruel softness, "Mark stayed with you long after he stopped wanting to. That's the kind of guilt you leave in your wake." Mark flinched slightly, so slight I might have imagined it, if not for the way he closed his eyes briefly as if bracing. My stomach twisted. "What do you mean by that?" Haley turned toward him. "Should I tell her, Mark? Or would you like the honors?" He stared at the floor. My pulse thudded painfully in my ears. "Tell me what." Haley leaned in, lowering her voice. "You really think he was loyal to you these last few months when he spent so much time here, when you were too depressed to even bother asking why he stayed late after work?" My throat tightened. "Haley, Mark and I have history you don't know about," she continued, brushing a strand of hair from her shoulder. "Old history, recent history, ongoing history." I looked at Mark. He didn't deny it. The air felt thin, razor sharp. "Explain," I whispered. He took a slow breath. "Rachel, things have been difficult between us for a long time, and I didn't expect something to happen. It wasn't planned." Haley snorted. "Oh, please, you practically begged for it." Mark glared at her, jaw tightening. "Stop." But she didn't. She stepped forward, standing close enough that I could smell the wine on her breath. "You never noticed," she said. "Not once. You were always too wrapped up in your career and your martyr complex to see what was happening right in front of you." Her smirk deepened. "You're the last to know, Rachel, just like always." My knees felt weak, not from the cold, from betrayal that made the floor tilt under my feet. Mark reached out slightly, maybe to steady me, maybe to pretend he still cared, but I stepped back. My shoulder brushed the window frame. A warning ripple ran through me. I don't want to hear any more, I whispered. I'm going downstairs. Haley blocked my path. No. You're not ruining this evening a second time. Haley, move. No. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow, too warm, too full of suffocating history. Haley set down her wine glass on the table beside her and crossed her arms. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to calm down, fix your makeup, and stay in your room until dinner's over. Then tomorrow you'll pack and leave our house quietly. My voice cracked. Your house. She lifted an eyebrow. Mom and Dad want peace. That means less of you. I laughed, short and shaky. That's not true. She tilted her head. Isn't it? Think about how many times they've tiptoed around your emotions. Think about how often they say things like, don't upset Rachel, and Rachel's been through a lot. They're exhausted. And honestly, so am I. My stomach churned. So you just want me gone? I want our lives back, she said simply. Before you showed up with all your problems, there wasn't enough air. I could barely breathe. You're lying, I whispered. Her face turned icy. I'm telling the truth. No one else has the courage to tell you. I shook my head slowly. No, Mom and Dad wouldn't choose you over me. Oh, Haley said softly. They already did. Footsteps creaked behind her. My mother's voice floated up from downstairs, an irritated, clipped tone. Is everything okay up there? Haley called back. Yes, I'm handling it. Handling it. Like I was an inconvenience, a stain, something to be managed. I stepped toward the railing, wanting space, wanting to escape before the humiliation swallowed me whole. But Haley cut me off again. You're not going anywhere until I'm finished. My pulse hammered. Haley, please just leave me alone. Mark moved slightly. Maybe we should stop. This is too far. Haley ignored him. You've always been dramatic, she said, ever since we were kids, always crying, always needing attention. Even now you spill one glass of wine and suddenly you're the victim. I bit the inside of my cheek, fighting the hot sting in my eyes. Stop twisting everything I said softly. Just stop. Make me, she snapped. I straightened, feeling something steady inside me harden. I'm done with you. And with all of this, I'm leaving. I turned toward the stairs. But that step was a mistake. Haley lunged, not violently, not with an obvious shove, but with a sudden aggressive block. Her forearm collided with my shoulder. My already unsteady footing slipped. Mark shouted my name. My heel skidded across the floor. My hand shot back, brushing the cold glass of the window. And in Haley's eyes, I saw a split-second decision. A choice. An intention. Her palm struck my upper arm fast, unexpected, fueled by anger and wine. The window behind me groaned, then shattered. Glass exploded around me like icy stars as my body pitched backward into the freezing night air. I didn't scream. The fall knocked the sound out of me. Wind swallowed everything. The cold hit first, then the ground hard and merciless. Pain radiated up my spine. Breath fled my lungs. Above me I heard Haley's voice, not panicked, not horrified, flat, cold. Oh my God, she'll get up. Mark's shadow hovered. Haley, what did you close the curtains? She hissed. Now. A moment later, Christmas light vanished as the window snapped shut, sealing me into the dark, frozen quiet. For a long time, all I could hear was my heartbeat slowing in my ears, pulsing weaker with each passing second. Then the snowfall began again. Thin flakes drifting onto my face. Soft, indifferent. I realized with a kind of detached terror that the snow would cover me long before anyone decided I was worth searching for. The first few seconds after I hit the frozen ground felt strangely silent, as if the world had paused to listen for the sound of my bones cracking. But nothing came, not even my own breathing at first. Just a ringing in my ears and the faint, distant thrum of Christmas music vibrating through the walls of the house. I tried to gasp to pull in air that refused to move through my lungs. My chest burned as though someone had wrapped iron bands around my ribs. Then slowly breath trickled back in a shallow, trembling inhale that tasted like metal and winter. I blinked up at the sky. Snowflakes drifted lazily downward, catching the porch light in tiny glimmers. Each one seemed to move slower than time itself. My mind tried to piece together what had just happened, but the edges of my memories were jagged. Haley's hand on my arm, the sound of glass shattering, the feeling of the world tilting backward. Then nothing. I tried to shift my leg toes maybe, but a sharp bolt of pain shot up my back so violently, my vision buzzed white. My body froze instinctively. I had been at enough trauma scenes to know better than to move blindly. Spinal injury, rib injury, possible head trauma. Hypothermia risk severe. My training spoke clearly even if fear scrambled the rest of me. Don't move. Breathe shallow. Conserve heat. But it was 10 degrees below zero, and I was lying in a thin indoor dress with one arm going numb from impact. The cold was not something I could conserve myself from. I tilted my head a millimeter, just enough to see the house from which I'd fallen. The broken window hung above like an open-mouthed jagged glass teeth glittering along the edges. Curtains swayed faintly, then slowly they closed fully again. My breath hitched. They weren't coming. Inside, laughter rippled again. Faint clinking of glasses. Someone coughed. Someone else made a joke. They had returned to dinner, to warmth, to life. And I lay outside broken on the snow like trash someone tossed out the window. A tremor ran through me, not from cold, but from a quiet, crushing clarity. I was alone. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. Literally alone. The cold seeped through my back, first a creeping frost that crawled up my spine until every muscle clenched beneath my skin. Instinct told me to curl into myself to hold my arms around my chest, but nothing below my shoulders obeyed. I whispered, "Move." Only a faint breath escaped. I tried again, focusing on my left hand, my good hand. The fingers twitched barely, just enough to scrape against the snow. The pain that followed was brutal, but it was pain-proof I was still here. My right hand was another story. The injured tendons had been fragile before the fall. Now they throbbed with a numb, icy ache that spread across my wrist. I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw, each breath thinner than the last. Above me the snow intensified. Soft flakes gathered on my hair, my eyelashes melting against my skin, just long enough to steal more heat before freezing again. My dress offered nothing. My skin prickled with a burning cold sensation that warned me how fast hypothermia could take hold. I had treated patients like this, people pulled from car wrecks or lost hikers found unconscious. I had always been the one hovering above them, assessing vitals, counting breaths. Now I was the one slipping away. I forced myself to speak. Airway clear, breathing shallow, circulation compromised. The words came out faint, uneven. A clinical chant to anchor myself to prevent panic from devouring what little warmth I had left. A gust of wind swept across the yard, flinging snow against my cheek like tiny shards of ice. I clenched my jaw, fighting the instinct to close my eyes and rest. Rest was the enemy. Once I slept, I wouldn't wake again. Inside the house, music changed tracks. A cheerful, upbeat song with bells and choirs, a cruel contrast to the frozen ache crawling through my body. I heard footsteps, a chair scraping. Someone laughed loudly. Haley's voice floated through the wall, muffled but distinct. "She'll calm down. She always does." My stomach twisted, nausea rising like a wave. She didn't even check. She didn't look out the window to see whether I had stood or crawled or lay bleeding on the ground. She didn't care. None of them did. I tried to shout, to scream, to make any sound that could pierce through the insulated walls and the terrible indifference inside them. "Help!" My voice cracked, barely a whisper. The wind carried it away instantly. A fresh spasm of pain shot through my ribs. I felt moisture beneath me, a thin layer of snow melting under my body heat only to refreeze. My skin adhered to the ice like glue. A wave of dizziness blurred my vision. The edges of the world softened. That terrified me more than anything. Stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. Hallucinations were next. Memory distortions. The brain's desperate attempt to shield itself from cold-induced trauma. My heartbeat fluttered weakly in my chest. Too slow, too faint. I forced myself to focus on anything real. The crunch of ice beneath my shoulder blade, the faint ticking sound inside the house, the grandfather clock in the hallway, the whistle of wind sliding past the gutter, anything to keep me in the present. Minutes blurred, time stretched. The cold burrowed deeper. My left hand twitched again, this time a little stronger. I lifted a finger, then another. Pain radiated immediately, but less sharp than before, numbness settling in. Not good. I clenched my jaw. Move fingers. Keep blood. Moving. It wasn't enough. Another gust of wind slammed into me, snow swirling across my body in a thin sheet. My arms trembled, but not from effort. This was involuntary shivering, stage 1 hypothermia. My brain recognized it with clinical detachment. Soon the shivering would stop. That was the real danger. I had to hold on. Inside I heard something new. Haley's voice again, but closer to the window. She was live streaming, her tone bright, cheerful, fake. She talked about the perfect Christmas Eve, about how the dinner was amazing, about how family means everything. The irony nearly made me laugh. She stormed off earlier, Haley said to her viewers, but she always gets dramatic on holidays. She'll be fine. My lips parted, but no sound came out. Snowflakes gathered on my eyelashes, weighing them down, until blinking felt like lifting bricks. The cold burned my cheeks, then slowly faded into a numb stillness. Not good. Not good. I inhaled sharply, forcing air into my lungs. Each breath felt like swallowing knives. Another memory flickered behind my eyes, Christmas morning when we were kids. Haley ripping open gifts, skipping mine entirely. Me pretending I didn't care. Our parents ignoring the tension because silence was easier than accountability. It was the first time I remembered feeling invisible. Tonight was the last. My stomach churned again. The wind screamed across the yard, rattling the icicles on the gutter. My body convulsed with a shiver that hurt so deeply it made my teeth ache. Then just as suddenly the shivering eased. Calm, still, too still. My chest tightened with dread. No. This was stage 2, the body conserving energy, the beginning of real danger. The edges of my vision darkened. I blinked hard. When I opened my eyes, I saw a shape beside me. A woman, not Haley. Not my mother. Someone softer, familiar. Her hair dark, her coat long, her expression gentle. My breath caught. Mom. She knelt beside me, brushing a strand of hair away from my forehead. Her fingers felt warm, impossibly warm. You have to stay awake, she whispered, her voice exactly as I remembered from childhood. It's not your time. Not tonight. Tears welled in my eyes. I can't. I'm so cold, I know, she murmured. But you've survived worse storms than this one. You survived them in that house long before you stepped outside tonight. A sob broke from my chest. I couldn't tell whether it was real or imagined. I can't move. You don't have to move, she whispered. You just have to fight. Someone's coming. Who? She smiled sadly. You'll see. Her form shimmered with the falling snow and vanished. My breath trembled. Mom, please. A sudden wave of cold slammed into me again, snapping me painfully back to reality. The hallucination dissolved, leaving only darkness and frost. But something had changed. A sound. A new one. Not inside the house, not the wind. Crunching, heavy, rhythmic. Footsteps, no tires. A car slowly approaching the driveway, headlights sweeping across the snow. Panic and hope surged together, a sharp, startling jolt that sent my pulse racing for the first time in hours. Stay awake. Stay alive. Just a little longer. The headlights grew brighter, an approaching angel or another threat I couldn't tell. But for the first time since I hit the ground, I felt a flicker of possibility. A lifeline, a chance. I forced my numb fingers to twitch again. Move, please, just move. And they did barely, just enough. The car door opened. A woman's voice rang out, familiar, shocked, horrified. Rachel. A sob escaped my frozen throat. Someone had come, someone had finally come, and I clung to that sound like it was the last warm thing on earth. A faint crunch of snow grew louder as footsteps raced toward me, each one punching through the frozen silence that had swallowed me whole. I tried to turn my head, but my neck protested a bolt of pain shooting down my spine. All I could do was lie still and listen as the steps approached quickly, hesitant at first, then frantic. "Rachel! Oh my God, Rachel!" The voice cracked with disbelief and horror at the same time. It took my brain a few seconds to recognize it, slowed by cold and confusion. It was my aunt, my mother's sister, Caroline. Her face hovered above me a moment later, framed by the swirling snow and the glow of the porch light. Her brown hair was tucked beneath a knit hat, but a few strands had come loose, plastered to her cheeks. She dropped to her knees beside me without hesitation, her breath coming fast. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" she asked, leaning close. I blinked slowly. It was the best I could manage. Even that felt like lifting a mountain. "Oh, thank God," she breathed, brushing snow from my forehead with trembling gloves. "Stay with me. I'm right here, Rachel. I'm right here." Her hands roamed gently over my shoulders and arms, searching for obvious wounds, careful not to jostle me. She muttered a curse under her breath when her fingers brushed the cold, wet fabric of my dress. "It's 10 degrees out here," she whispered, voice shaking. "How long have you been lying in this snow?" I couldn't answer. My lips barely parted, but I didn't have to. She looked up toward the house, toward the darkened window, and seemed to understand everything in an instant. Her expression hardened, anger and disbelief tightening her jaw. "They didn't call anyone," she whispered. "They didn't even check." She looked back at me, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "Hold on! I'm calling for help. Don't close your eyes." She fumbled with her phone, her gloved fingers slipping on the screen. After a second try, the call went through. "This is an emergency," she said into the phone. "I found my niece outside my sister's house. She's unresponsive but breathing severe hypothermia, possible spinal injury. Send an ambulance right away." Her voice was firm, sharper than I'd ever heard from her, not panicked, determined. She ended the call and leaned close again. "Ambulance is on its way, sweetheart. You're going to be okay. Just stay awake for me a little longer." A tear fell onto my cheek, warm for half a second before the cold devoured it. She took off her coat and draped it across my torso, tucking it around my shoulders to trap what little heat remained. "Where does it hurt the most?" "Your back, your ribs," she asked, scanning me with frantic eyes. I tried to speak. A sound escaped, a thin, broken whisper. "Be back." "I know," she murmured. "I can see from the way you're lying. Don't move. I won't touch your spine." She stroked my hair gently. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner. I should never have let you stay in that house." Her anger rose again, not at me, but at the front door that remained closed. The lights that stayed dim, the silence from inside that made everything worse. She stood abruptly and shouted toward the house. "Hello, did anyone even check on her?" Her voice echoed across the yard. No answer. She took a step toward the porch but stopped herself. Her instinct was to confront them, but she refused to leave me alone for even a second. Instead, she knelt beside me again, her breath a steady rhythm above my ear. "You're safe," she whispered. "I won't let them hurt you again." The words drifted over me in a haze, but they rooted somewhere deep inside, holding me to the surface of consciousness. A new noise broke through the stillness, a door opening. Mark stepped onto the porch, the warm yellow light spilling around his figure. He hesitated, squinting into the snow. "Caroline," he called stiffly. "Is something wrong?" Her head snapped toward him so fast, snow flurried from her scarf. "Don't you dare," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the wind. "Don't you take one step down those stairs." He froze. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice wavering just slightly. "I'm saving your wife's life," she snapped. "Something you apparently couldn't be bothered to do." He swallowed, glancing at the window above, then back at her. She ran outside. We thought she needed air. Caroline recoiled as if his words were toxic. She didn't run anywhere, she said. I saw the broken window, Mark. I heard Haley screaming from the driveway. I know what happened. Mark's mouth opened, then closed like he wanted to deny it, but hadn't rehearsed a lie convincing enough. Caroline leaned over me, shielding me with her body. Stay on that porch, she warned. I swear to God, if you come closer, I'll... She never finished. The distant wail of sirens pierced the night, growing louder by the second. Red and blue lights flickered against the trees along the road, painting the snow in frantic colors. Caroline exhaled shakily. They're here, sweetheart. Hold on. 2 emergency vehicles pulled into the driveway, tires crunching hard into the icy ground. Paramedics spilled out within seconds, moving with swift, confident precision. They carried medical bags, blankets, a backboard. One knelt beside me immediately. Ma'am, can you hear me? He asked, his voice calm but urgent. I blinked twice. Okay, he said, that's good. Stay with me. Caroline stepped back slightly but kept her hand on my shoulder. She's freezing. She hasn't been able to move. I don't know how long she's been lying here. Another paramedic inspected my fingers, pressing lightly. Severe frostbite beginning. Pulse weak. Core temperature dangerously low. A third pulled a warming blanket over me, tucking it around my neck and sides. We need to stabilize her spine before we move her, he said. Possible compression fracture. Caroline swallowed a sob. The paramedic leaned closer to her. Finding her when you did probably saved her life. Caroline nodded, tears streaming freely now. They secured a cervical collar around my neck, lifting my head only a fraction of an inch. I winced at the pain, a sharp bolt like electricity down my back. Easy, Rachel, the paramedic murmured. Almost done. 2 more paramedics slid the backboard beneath me with a coordinated, controlled movement. Even so, the shift sent agony shooting through my ribs and spine. A strangled sound escaped my throat. I know, the paramedic said. I know it hurts. You're doing great. When they finally lifted me, the cold ground fell away and I felt weightless, terrifyingly so. They carried me across the yard toward the ambulance, the red lights flashing like heartbeats around us. Caroline followed closely, refusing to leave my side. At the ambulance doors, one paramedic stopped her gently. You can ride with us, but stay toward the front until we secure her. Caroline nodded. Inside, everything happened fast. Warm air blasted from vents. Hands moved quickly, oxygen mask placed over my mouth. IV inserted into my arm, warm fluids began to flow into my body. Machines beeped softly as they read my vitals. Someone placed heating packs along my chest and sides. The paramedic closest to me spoke with calm reassurance. You're safe now, Rachel. Stay with us. Your core temp is low, but we're bringing it up. My vision blurred, sound muffled. Don't let her fall asleep, another said. Keep her talking if you can. But I couldn't talk. I drifted, my mind flickering like a dying candle. Rachel, Caroline whispered from the front seat, turning around as far as the restraints allowed. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Her voice was a thread I clung to, even as darkness pulled at the edges of everything. The ambulance lurched forward, sirens wailing. Every bump in the road echoed through my bones, but even pain felt far away now, as if my body belonged to someone else. The paramedic leaned down. We've got you. Stay awake. You're minutes from the ER. Minutes. I had no sense of time anymore. The world dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. Then the paramedic's voice sharpened. Temp rising. Good. Heart rate stabilizing. My eyelids fluttered. Rachel, look at me, he said firmly. Look at me. I forced my eyes open. He nodded. Good. You hold on a little longer. Caroline's voice floated through the space between us, warm and fierce. You're not dying, Rachel. Not tonight. Not because of them. The paramedic announced, arriving at ER in 40 seconds. Prep trauma bay. Another voice crackled over the radio, confirming readiness. The ambulance braked sharply. The doors burst open. Cold air rushed in again, but this time it didn't swallow me. Hands lifted me. Lights blinded me. Voices swirled around me. Severe hypothermia. Possible spinal trauma. Get warming blankets. BP low, keep monitoring. A doctor leaned over me. Rachel, you're safe. We've got you. As they rushed me inside, a wave of relief washed through me, so overwhelming I almost cried. I had survived the cold. I had survived the fall. Now, inside these bright hospital walls, surrounded by people who wanted me to live, I finally felt the first fragile spark of something I hadn't felt in hours. Hope. Bright lights flooded my vision the moment the trauma bay doors slid open, washing everything in sterile white. For a split second, I couldn't tell whether I was dreaming or drifting somewhere between worlds. But the voices around me, steady, purposeful, practiced, pulled me back into the present. Core temperature dangerously low. Pulse thready, but improving. She's been exposed for hours. Prepare for active rewarming. Hands moved above me, around me, beneath me. The movements were efficient, synchronized, almost rhythmic in the way trauma teams always were. Even through the fog blurring my vision, I recognized the cadence of emergency medicine, the clipped commands, the gentle reassurances, the beeping monitors, the soft whir of warming equipment activating. I knew this world. I had lived in it for years. But never like this. Rachel, can you hear me? A doctor asked, leaning into my line of sight. His glasses reflected the overhead lights, and I could see the outline of a surgical mask moving with each word. My name is Dr. Archer. We're going to take care of you. My eyelids flickered. I wanted to tell him I understood, that I knew what hypothermia did to the heart and lungs, that I knew spinal injuries required caution, that I wasn't afraid of the hospital, only of the house I had left behind. But the words stuck somewhere between my thoughts, and my voice trapped under layers of exhaustion. A nurse slid something beneath my arm. Her fingers are frostbitten. Stage 1, keep monitoring perfusion. Another nurse lowered a warming blanket over my chest, and the sudden heat pressed into my skin like fire. It hurt at first, sharp, burning, overwhelming, but then my body began to adjust. They cut the sleeve of my dress to check my arm more closely. I heard the scissors snip through fabric. She has bruising here, someone murmured. Upper arm. Looks recent. Pattern suggests forceful grabbing. My heart stuttered at the words. Dr. Archer's tone sharpened. Document everything. A second voice asked, Do we notify law enforcement? Already done, Caroline answered from somewhere behind the curtain. They're on their way. Her voice trembled slightly, but held a steel I hadn't known she possessed. The team worked with precise intensity. Heated IV fluids dripped into my vein. Warm air circulated beneath the blanket. A nurse checked my pupils with a small flashlight. Reactive, she said. She's responsive. Rachel, Dr. Archer said again, if you can blink twice to answer yes. I blinked twice. Good, he said. Do you remember falling? I blinked twice again. He continued slowly. Did you slip one blink? Did someone push you? 2 blinks. A hush fell over the people closest to me. It wasn't silence exactly, just that collective intake of air that happens when truth enters a room. I saw Caroline through the haze, her hand pressed over her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. Okay, Dr. Archer said gently. We'll let the officers know. I wanted to say thank you to him, to the nurses, to anyone who was helping, but my mind drifted again, slithering toward unconsciousness, like an undertow pulling me toward sleep. Her heart rate is dropping, someone warned. No, no, Rachel, stay with us, another voice urged. Don't go to sleep. I fought my eyelids, forcing them open despite how heavy they felt. Each second I kept them open felt like lifting weights underwater. You're doing well, a nurse whispered. We're almost through the dangerous phase. The heating unit hummed. My fingers tingled painfully. Pins and needles stabbed my legs as blood flow attempted to return. The sensations were awful and weirdly comforting. They meant I was alive. After what felt like both 5 minutes and a lifetime, the chaos softened. Monitors beeped at steadier intervals. Nurses moved with less urgency. Dr. Archer checked my vitals one last time before stepping aside to speak with Caroline. "She's stable," he said, "but she has a long recovery ahead. We need imaging spine, ribs, pelvis. She has clear signs of trauma." Caroline's voice lowered. "She told me she tried to that she didn't slip. She confirmed it," he replied. "Someone pushed her." A coldness, not the physical kind, spread through my chest. The words hung in the air like frost. Pushed her. Not an accident. Not a misunderstanding. Not a moment of chaos or confusion. Intentional. The curtain rustled, and Caroline stepped closer to me. Her eyes were red, but her hands were steady. She brushed my hair back gently. "I'm here, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm not leaving." I blinked weakly in response. Gratitude swelled inside me. Before she could say more, the curtain pulled open again. A police officer stepped in, a tall man with kind eyes that didn't soften the seriousness of his expression. "Miss Harrington," he asked, confirming my identity. "I'm Officer Mason. I know you're not able to talk right now, but I need to ask a few quick questions." I blinked once to acknowledge him. He moved closer so he wouldn't have to raise his voice. "Were you in the house celebrating Christmas Eve with your family?" 2 blinks. Did an argument occur before the fall? 2 blinks. Was your sister present? 2 blinks. Your husband? 2 blinks. He paused. His jaw tightened slightly. Did someone physically force you toward the window? 2 blinks. Your sister? 2 blinks. And did your husband pull you upstairs before it happened? 2 blinks again. Caroline covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking as the officer scribbled notes quickly. "Okay," Officer Mason murmured. "We'll talk more when you're medically cleared." He turned to Caroline. "Ma'am, do you know who else was in the house?" She nodded, anger sharp in her voice. "Her parents. They didn't call anyone. They didn't even check on her." The officer's expression darkened. "They will need to be questioned as well." Footsteps echoed behind him, another nurse pushing a portable machine. "Time for X-rays," she said softly. They moved me carefully, sliding me onto the imaging bed. Even the slightest shift sent pain searing through my hips and lower back. My breath hitched sharply. "Easy," the nurse said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Just breathe." The lights dimmed. Machines hummed. Images clicked into place. "Compression fracture," the radiologist said after reviewing the scans. "Ribs, too." This wasn't a simple fall. When they moved me back into the trauma bay, Dr. Archer returned. "You're going to need several days of observation," he said. "But you survived something people rarely survive. You're stronger than you think." His words warmed me in a way no blanket could. Caroline squeezed my hand gently. "You're safe now," she whispered. "They can't hurt you anymore." But even as she said it, I saw the officer step aside to answer his radio. His expression shifted, subtle but unmistakably tense. Caroline noticed too. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated. "We went to question your family. They're saying it was an accident." My stomach twisted. More murmurs came through his radio. More notes, more tension. Officer Mason lowered the device slowly. "And your sister is refusing to speak without a lawyer present." Of course she was. Cowards didn't face consequences, they avoided them until they grew stronger. But then he added, "Your husband is cooperating so far." Cooperating. Not confessing. Not defending me. Just cooperating. It stung more than the cold. When the officer left the bay, Caroline sat beside me again, running a gentle hand through my hair. "Rest," she whispered. "You're out of the snow. You're in the right hands now." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to let my eyes close and drift into nothingness. But exhaustion carried flashes of memory with it, Haley's cruel smile. Mark's silence, my parents' indifference, the window breaking, the cold swallowing me. I forced my eyes open again, gripping the present moment with everything I had left. Rewarming continued. Monitors beeped steadily. Nurses checked my vitals every few minutes. Dr. Archer eventually returned a clipboard in hand. "Her core temperature is up," he said. "She's stable for transfer to a regular bed." Someone touched my shoulder gently. I looked up. Caroline. Her eyes soft, her expression fierce. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. And for the first time that night, despite the pain, despite the betrayal, despite the hours in the snow, I believed her. The hospital room was dim when they finally transferred me in, illuminated only by a single wall lamp casting a honey-colored glow across the blankets tucked tightly around my body. My breath fogged faintly against the oxygen mask. My fingers tingled painfully beneath warming packs. And somewhere deep in my bones, the cold still clung stubbornly, refusing to let go entirely. Caroline sat in the chair beside my bed, her coat draped over her knees, her eyes watching me with a mixture of exhaustion and unrelenting protectiveness. She had barely left my side since the ambulance doors closed hours earlier. Every time a nurse stepped in to take vitals or adjust my IV, Caroline stood too, as if she needed to supervise the universe to make sure no one else failed me again. "You're doing better," she whispered when she saw my eyes open. "Your color's coming back. Your breathing sounds stronger." I blinked, slowly acknowledging her. My throat felt too swollen, too sore, too raw for words. A soft knock at the door broke the quiet, and a nurse stepped inside. She checked my blood pressure, then adjusted the heat settings on the blanket draped over me. "Your temperature is still climbing," she said, offering a gentle smile. "You're not out of the woods yet, but you're moving in the right direction." Caroline exhaled softly. Thank God. The nurse left, and the room settled again into a peaceful hum of machines. Outside the window, snow fell steadily, thick flakes drifting past the orange glow of streetlights. I watched them blur and sharpen through my foggy vision, each one a reminder of the cold I had escaped barely. Caroline leaned forward. "Do you want water?" she asked. I nodded faintly. She lifted a cup with a straw and held it to my lips. The water felt warm, soothing exactly what my throat needed. As I drank, her eyes lingered on the purpling bruises forming along my collarbone. She gently touched the edge of one, her fingertips trembling. "I saw the window," she whispered. "The glass. The angle. It wasn't an accident." The memory hit like a jolt, Haley's palm against my arm, the sickening lurch backward, the cold rush of air swallowing me as I fell. A shiver ran through me. Caroline immediately pulled the blanket higher around my shoulders. "I'm so sorry," she murmured. "I'm sorry you were alone out there. Sorry no one in that house came to help you. Sorry your parents." Her voice cracked and she turned away briefly, wiping her eyes. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, then faced me again. "The police questioned them, Rachel. Your parents said they thought you went for a walk." Haley refused to answer questions. "Mark said he didn't know you fell." A hollow ache spread through my chest. His face, his voice, his betrayal, they all twisted inside me like shards of the broken window. Caroline's eyes softened. "You don't have to talk about it now. But when you're ready, I'm here. Whatever they did, whatever they've been doing, you're not going back there." I blinked once slowly, agreeing. She hesitated, then added, "And I need you to know something. I didn't show up tonight by coincidence." That startled something in me. I blinked at her, waiting. Her shoulders sagged as if she were finally allowing herself to be honest. "I drove by because something didn't feel right. I tried calling earlier, but your mother said everything was perfect. Too perfect. Her voice. It didn't match her words. And Haley didn't answer my messages." She swallowed hard. "When I passed the house, I noticed one curtain upstairs was torn. Something just tugged at me. And then I saw snow disturbed on the ground. I stopped the car before I even thought about what I was doing." She reached for my hand. I'm glad I listened to my gut. I squeezed her fingers weakly, just enough for her to feel it. Her eyes filled with fresh tears at the small gesture. Another knock interrupted us, this one firmer. Officer Mason stepped inside, removing his hat. His expression was serious but gentle. "Miss Harrington," he said quietly, approaching the bed. "I know you're still recovering, but I need to ask a few follow-up questions. We'll keep it brief." Caroline straightened immediately. "Only if she's ready." The officer met my gaze. "Are you able to continue?" I blinked twice, yes. He retrieved his notebook. "Earlier you confirmed that your sister pushed you. We now have reason to believe that your parents were aware something happened but didn't call for help." My stomach clenched. Caroline's scoffed anger bubbling at the surface. They left her outside. They sat inside eating dinner while she froze. The officer nodded grimly. "We reviewed footage from your neighbor's home security camera. It captured the sound of the window breaking and a body hitting the ground. It also shows no one leaving the house afterward." Caroline gasped softly. "Oh, God!" Officer Mason continued. "We're treating this as a criminal assault and possible attempted homicide." The words echoed in the small room heavier than the winter storm outside. He leaned slightly closer. "I also need to confirm something else. Did your husband restrain you upstairs before the fall?" The air in my lungs thickened. I blinked twice. Caroline's breath shook. "Unbelievable! And was he acting on your sister's instruction?" 2 blinks. The officer scribbled the final note, his expression tightening with each detail. "Thank you," he said softly. "You've given us enough to move forward. We'll take it from here. You focus on healing." Before he left, he paused. "There will be more questions later, and likely a hearing, but you won't face them alone." When he stepped out, Caroline let out a long, unsteady breath. "That's it," she whispered. "They're going to face this. Every one of them." A nurse entered again, this time with a fresh blanket and medication. As she worked, Caroline stood and paced slowly, anger simmering beneath her ribs. "I knew things were strained," she said, voice raw. "I knew Haley could be cruel. But this is something else entirely. And your parents, how could they not care?" "Who leaves their daughter outside in the cold?" Her voice broke. "This family was supposed to protect you, not destroy you." I closed my eyes briefly, wishing I could tell her everything: how Haley had cornered me, how Mark had betrayed me, how my parents had smiled through every red flag until I believed it was my fault for breathing wrong. The nurse left us in silence, and for several long minutes the only sound in the room was the soft hum of machines. Eventually, Caroline sat again, her hand resting on mine. "You're part of my family too," she whispered. "The part I choose." My chest tightened, not with pain, but with something bittersweet, something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. A fragile warmth began spreading from the inside, warmer than the heated blankets, deeper than the IV fluids. The kind of warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. My eyes grew heavy, not from danger, but from exhaustion, safe exhaustion, the first kind in weeks. Caroline stroked my hair gently. "Rest. I'll be right here when you wake up." And this time, for the first time all night, I didn't fight the pull of sleep. Because I wasn't alone anymore. Because the cold outside couldn't reach me here. Because someone at last had chosen to stay. I woke to the soft rhythm of rain tapping against the window, a sound so gentle it took me a moment to realize where I was. For a fleeting second in that blurry space between sleep and consciousness, I imagined I was back in my small apartment in Seattle where mornings smelled like coffee and early sunlight glowed through pale curtains. But when I shifted and pain radiated through my ribs, reality snapped back. The hospital room, the IV, the brace wrapped tightly around my torso, and Caroline sleeping awkwardly in the chair beside my bed, her head resting on a folded jacket, her hand still loosely holding mine, even in sleep. The rain outside was a relief compared to the snowstorm from the night before, a reminder that time was moving, that I was somehow still here to witness it. My mouth felt dry, my tongue heavy. I reached weakly for the cup of water on the bedside table, but even that small motion sent a sharp protest through my spine. Caroline stirred immediately. "Rachel." Her voice was groggy but full of alert concern. Are you okay? Do you need something? I blinked once and nodded toward the cup. Oh, of course. She stood quickly, brushing hair out of her eyes as she moved the straw to my lips. Here. Small sips. The water soothed my throat. I exhaled a shaky breath. You slept, she murmured, relief softening her expression. A full 8 hours. You needed that. It surprised me too. Sleep had always been elusive even before the accident. But last night, safe warm watched over, I had fallen into a deep, dreamless rest. Before either of us could say more, there was a knock at the door. Caroline stiffened slightly as Detective Harris stepped inside, holding a folder and wearing the expression of someone walking into a room with truth too heavy to carry gently. Good morning, he said, offering a respectful nod. I'm relieved to see you awake, Rachel. I blinked twice, acknowledging him. He approached slowly. I know this is a lot, and you don't have to speak at all. Nods or blinks are perfectly fine. But we need to go through the events of the last 24 hours with more detail. Caroline tensed, but she didn't interrupt. Detective Harris opened the folder. We've gathered evidence from your house. I'll go through it step by step. My pulse quickened. Something inside me braced. First, he said we recovered broken glass from the backyard. The direction of the shards confirms that the window broke outward, not inward. That means you were pushed from inside the house. My stomach tightened. He flipped to another page. Second, the neighbors 2 doors down have a porch camera facing the street. It recorded the sound of the window shattering at 8:47 p.m., followed by a loud impact consistent with a human body hitting frozen ground. Caroline's hand tightened around mine. Third, he continued the same recording picked up voices from inside your house shortly after. A woman your sister was heard saying, "She'll get up. She always does." Another voice told her to calm down. My breath hitched. Fourth, Detective Harris said your sister's live stream recorded audio from inside the house. In that video, your mother tells guests you went for fresh air, and Mark says you needed space. No one makes any attempt to check on you. Each word landed like a weight on my chest. And finally he added your parents and your husband each gave initial statements claiming they believed you left the house voluntarily. Caroline scoffed under her breath. They lied. They did, Harris said. The evidence contradicts every piece of their story. He paused, letting the weight settle. Rachel, he said softly, this wasn't negligence. This was coordination. A shared decision to hide what happened. My breath trembled through the oxygen mask. Caroline leaned closer. You don't ever have to see them again, she whispered fiercely. You owe them nothing. Detective Harris cleared his throat. There's more. Caroline straightened, bracing herself. Harris slid a printed sheet from his folder and placed it gently on the side table next to me. We recovered text messages from Haley's phone with your husband. She deleted them, but we retrieved them from the cloud. My chest tightened so sharply it hurt. Caroline looked at the sheet, then covered her mouth with her hand, horrified. One message stood out, highlighted at the top. Just take her upstairs. I'll handle it. Another mark, don't you dare mess this up again. And the worst, when she's gone, everything will be easier. My vision blurred with tears. Caroline whispered, Oh my God, they planned to hurt you. Detective Harris nodded grimly. We believe your sister acted on impulse, but the intent to isolate you upstairs was premeditated. My pulse pounded in my ears. He lowered his voice. Rachel, this wasn't a moment of anger. It was a pattern, one your husband's sister and parents participated in long before last night. Caroline shook with rage. They tried to break her, for years, and when that wasn't enough, they tried to get rid of her. Detective Harris didn't contradict her. Instead, he asked softly, Rachel, do you remember what your sister said before pushing you? A flicker of memory surfaced the hallway light, the cold air, Haley's voice dripping with resentment. You ruin everything she had said. Tonight is important. I blinked twice. Caroline whispered, She pushed you because of appearances. Because you spilled wine. Harris nodded. It fits the pattern. A nurse entered briefly to check my vitals, giving us a moment to breathe. When she left, Detective Harris stepped closer. "Rachel," he said gently, "we've issued a protective order. No one from that house is allowed near you." My muscles loosened slightly with relief. And he added, "An arrest warrant is being processed for your sister." A shock rippled through me, for assault and attempted homicide. Caroline squeezed my hand. "Good." Harris continued, "Your husband and your parents may face charges as well for failure to render aid obstruction and contributing to your injuries." I blinked once, slowly, exhausted but relieved. He closed his folder. "I'll come back tomorrow. Rest for now. You're safe." When he left, Caroline sank back into the chair, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "I knew they didn't treat you right," she whispered. "But I never imagined this." I felt my throat tighten. I wished I could tell her everything, how every year in that house had chipped away at me, how every criticism, every silent dinner, every forced smile had hollowed something out inside me. Caroline reached for my hand again. "You're stronger than them, Rachel. You always have been." The rain outside grew heavier, tapping harder against the window, as if the world was weeping with us. For several minutes neither of us spoke. I drifted in and out of light sleep, my mind weaving memories with fragments of the present. Then Caroline cleared her throat softly. "There's one more thing," she said hesitantly. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." My eyes opened slowly. Her expression was conflicted, as if she were carrying a story too heavy to balance alone. "It's about your parents," she said, "and the way they treated you, and why I never trusted them." A strange chill rippled through me, not from cold this time, but from something deeper. She took a slow breath. "When your mom died," she whispered, "I tried to fight for you. But they pushed me out. They didn't want me involved because they knew I saw what they were doing." Her hands trembled. "And Rachel." I believe they knew the night could end like this. I believe they let Haley become what she is. A lump formed in my throat. My entire life they had stood by Haley and stepped over me. And now Caroline was here, the one person who had always tried to stay by my side, even when I didn't know it. She leaned closer, brushing a tear from my cheek. "You survived, sweetheart," she whispered. "You survived them. And I promise you, they will never touch you again." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly. Inside, for the first time in years, I felt something in me begin to thaw, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. The cold was no longer winning. I was. The next morning, pale winter sunlight spilled across the hospital room floor, turning the tiled surface into a dull sheet of gold. I woke to a dull ache pulsing through my lower back, a slow, rhythmic reminder of the injury that had nearly taken my life. My ribs throbbed each time I inhaled. My right hand, still wrapped and elevated, tingled with a cold, numb heaviness that made it feel almost foreign. But I was conscious. I was breathing. I was alive. Caroline sat at the edge of my bed, holding a small styrofoam cup of hospital coffee that steamed softly between her palms. Her eyes were tired, but they lit up the moment she saw mine open. "Good morning," she whispered. "How's the pain?" I blinked twice, then mouthed, "Manageable." She nodded, relieved. "They'll bring more meds soon. Breakfast, too." Her voice carried a warmth I'd never heard from anyone in my childhood home, a warmth that didn't demand perfection or silence or performance, a warmth that didn't twist itself into knives. A knock sounded at the door before I could respond. Detective Harris entered carrying another folder, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman followed him, a victim advocate, judging by her badge. She wore a soft gray sweater and had a calm presence that settled the air instantly. Rachel Harris said gently, "This is Nora. She's here to help walk you through the next steps and make sure you're supported." Nora smiled warmly. "I'm here for anything you need." Legal guidance, emotional support, help arranging safe housing, anything. Safe housing. The phrase hit me like ice water. Even in a hospital bed, surrounded by warmth and nurses and security, a part of me still expected the door to swing open and my sister, or worse, my parents, to walk in. To blame me again. To lie again. To take something else from me. Caroline must have noticed my tension, because she placed a hand gently on my forearm. "You're safe here," she murmured. "No one can come near you." Detective Harris nodded. "Security has been informed that only approved visitors are allowed. Your family has been barred from entering the hospital unless you explicitly request otherwise." I released a shaky breath. Rachel Harris continued, softening his voice further. "I'm here to update you on the investigation." Caroline straightened, bracing herself. "Last night he said we issued an arrest warrant for your sister." My pulse quickened. He opened the folder. "She was taken into custody early this morning." Caroline let out a sharp exhale somewhere between relief and outrage. "Good." But Harris didn't look relieved. He looked complicated. "There's more," he said slowly. "Your sister is claiming she acted out of fear. She's trying to say you were out of control and she pushed you to protect herself." Caroline scoffed. "That's ridiculous. Rachel couldn't even lift her hand without pain." "I know," Harris said. "And fortunately we have evidence contradicting her claim footage, medical reports, witness statements." He hesitated. "But she's also implying that your husband encouraged her, that he told her he felt unsafe around you, that they were trying to de-escalate a situation." My chest tightened painfully. They weren't just lying, they were coordinating their lies. Caroline bristled. "Mark was never afraid of Rachel. He was afraid of being exposed." Harris nodded. "We're aware. His story is already falling apart." He pulled out another page. "The messages we recovered from Haley's phone combined with the timeline suggest collusion. We believe your husband may have helped lure you upstairs." I closed my eyes, unable to stop the wave of nausea. Even after everything, even after the cold, the fall, the dark silence, knowing that Mark had willingly handed me over to my sister felt like a betrayal deeper than the freezing ground. Caroline squeezed my hand again. "Rachel, you didn't deserve any of this." I blinked back tears. My throat tightened painfully. Harris continued gently. "And there's one more thing. It concerns your parents." Caroline stiffened. "We have audio from the live stream," he said. "Your mother told guests you had stormed out and needed space, but we also retrieved text messages between her and Haley during the dinner." He placed the paper on the tray beside my bed. My vision blurred as I scanned the text. "Don't go outside. Don't follow her. She'll come back when she cools off. We can't have drama tonight." Another message, this one from my father: "Do not call anyone. We'll handle it later." I felt the air leave my lungs. They knew. They knew I wasn't coming back inside. They knew I was hurt. They just didn't care. Caroline's voice trembled with fury. "They left her outside on purpose." Harris didn't argue. "We're preparing charges against them for neglect and obstruction," he said. "But we want to move carefully. We want everything airtight." I blinked twice, understanding. He gave a small nod. "We're here to protect you, Rachel, and we'll continue to update you as things evolve." When he and Nora left, the room fell quiet again. Caroline's shoulders shook slightly. "I knew your parents weren't perfect," she whispered. "But this is evil." Tears slid down her cheeks. I lifted my hand slowly, painfully, and touched her wrist. She covered my hand with both of hers, crying openly now. "They should have protected you," she said. "They should have chosen you. They should have loved you." Each word broke something open inside me, a truth I had buried for years beneath layers of excuses, apologies, and longing. They did not love me the way parents should love their child. They loved the version of me that didn't speak, didn't need, didn't interrupt their perfect image. Haley had always been the golden one, the adored one, the one who could do no wrong, They shielded her from consequences like she was made of fragile glass even when she shattered everyone else around her. I was the afterthought, the prop, the scapegoat. A nurse entered a moment later, offering a soft smile. "Time for physical therapy evaluation," she said. Caroline wiped her eyes quickly and nodded. The therapist, a young woman named Lena, entered with a tablet and a careful step. "We're just going to assess your baseline mobility," she explained softly. "No major movement today, just testing your response." I braced myself as she began. Gentle pressure along my spine, a slow rotation of my ankle, a soft tap along my ribs. Everything hurt, everything throbbed, but everything worked, even if only barely. "You're lucky," she said quietly after finishing. "Another 30 minutes outside in that temperature and your muscles would have shut down completely." I swallowed. Lucky. The word didn't feel like it belonged to me, not yet. After she left, Caroline returned to her chair. She sat for a long moment watching me with an expression that seemed to be battling grief, anger, and determination all at once. "Rachel," she whispered finally, "I think it's time you knew the truth about why your parents always treated Haley differently." My breath caught. "There's something I never told you," she continued, "about what your mother said before she died, about a secret she made me promise not to reveal until you were older." She hesitated. "Then your parents always preferred Haley because she wasn't your mother's daughter." The room went still. The monitors beeped softly. My heartbeat thundered. Caroline's voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "Haley was the result of an affair. Your father's affair. Your mother took her in anyway. She raised her like her own. But your parents buried the truth and shifted the roles. They praised Haley to keep the secret buried, and they let you fade into the background to keep the family image intact." A sharp, cold pain stabbed my ribs, but it wasn't physical. It was betrayal. It was understanding. It was everything finally making sense. Caroline wiped her tears. "Your mother loved you more than anything in the world. She wanted to tell you, but she was afraid of what it would do to you. And after she died, your father made sure the truth disappeared." I lay frozen, not from winter this time, but from truth. Caroline stood and leaned close. "You were the only one in that house worth loving," she whispered fiercely, "and they resented you for it." Tears spilled down my cheeks. For the first time in years, the weight of my family's cruelty had context. For the first time in years, I understood I was never the problem. And for the first time in years, something inside me buried deep under frost, and fear began to thaw. Slowly. Painfully. But undeniably. The hospital window framed a pale winter morning, the kind that made the world look bleached and quiet, as if everything were holding its breath. I stared at the snow for a long time, letting the stillness seep into me. It was strange how the cold outside seemed peaceful, gentle, even nothing like the cruel, suffocating cold I had endured that night beneath the broken window. Nothing like the coldness that had lived inside my family for far longer. Caroline returned from the hallway carrying 2 cups of tea, handing one to me with a small smile. "The doctor said you can try warm liquids now," she murmured. "Sip slowly." I brought the cup to my lips, wincing as my ribs pulled. The warmth spread down my throat, landing somewhere deep in my chest where it eased something tight and aching. "You're getting stronger," she said. "I can see it." I wasn't sure if she meant physically or emotionally. Both felt fragile, like thin sheets of ice that could crack under the wrong kind of pressure. But I nodded anyway. A soft knock came at the door. This time I expected Detective Harris or another nurse. Instead, a different officer stepped in, a woman with a calm expression and dark eyes that took in everything without intruding. "Rachel," she asked quietly. "I'm Officer Reyes. I'm assisting with the investigation." Caroline straightened in her chair, her posture immediately protective. Officer Reyes approached the bed slowly. "You don't have to talk today, but I'd like to walk you through what's going to happen next, especially regarding your statement." My heart thudded softly beneath heated blankets. She pulled out a thin folder. The district attorney is preparing charges against your sister and husband. They'll likely move quickly to secure a preliminary hearing. Your testimony, verbal or written, will be central. I swallowed, throat tightening. However, she continued gently, we know your injuries make speaking difficult, and trauma can make recounting events overwhelming. That's why we want to give you options. She set the folder on the bedside table. You can give a written statement, a video statement, a recorded interview, whatever is least stressful for you. Anything you give us will be admissible. Caroline placed a hand on my arm. You don't have to decide right now. But the fact that I had a choice, a say, felt new, powerful in a quiet way. For years, choice had not belonged to me. Decisions were made around me, over me, through me. I had been dragged, instructed, silenced, dissolved. Now, even the smallest freedom felt like sunlight. Officer Reyes offered a soft smile. I'll come back later. For now, rest. You're safe. When she left, the room felt calm again, but not for long. Minutes later, Caroline's phone buzzed. She frowned at the caller ID. It's your father, she whispered. Cold, not the winter kind, spread through my body. Before I could blink or gesture, she answered. Her voice turned clipped. What do you want? Whatever he said on the other end made her eyes harden like glass. No, she snapped, you are not speaking to her. She is not to have contact with any of you. His voice crackled loud enough that I could hear the muffled edge of it, agitated, defensive, indignant. Caroline's jaw clenched. An accident. She almost died. Rachel was minutes from hypothermia-induced cardiac failure. Is that an accident to you? He said something else. Something long. Something frantic. Caroline's lips curled, not in a smile but in disbelief. You care about reputation, not her life. You never cared about the truth. And if you think blaming her is going to protect Haley or Mark, think again. More muffled protest. No, she repeated coldly. No. The police have evidence. I saw the messages. I saw the broken window. Stop lying. She paused again, listening. Then she said something that made my throat tighten. Rachel owes you nothing. Nothing. She hung up and sat back down, shaking with fury. I won't let them near you again, she whispered. Not one of them. I blinked slowly, gratitude swelling in my chest, warm and steady. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. Physical therapy returned to test small movements. I drifted in and out of shallow sleep, my mind floating between memory and present. Late in the afternoon, another knock sounded. This time, it was Dr. Archer, the ER doctor from the night of my arrival. He stepped inside, folding his arms gently. How are you feeling today? He asked. I blinked once, a cautious better. That's good, he said. Your body's responding well to rewarming, and your scans show no permanent spinal damage. With therapy, you'll walk normally again. Carolyn let out a soft breath of relief, but he added gently, I want you to understand how close things were. Another 10 minutes outside and we would not be having this conversation. His voice softened. You weren't just cold, Rachel. You were dying. A hollow silence followed. I felt the truth settle across my ribs like a second brace, heavy but stabilizing. I had come within minutes of slipping out of this world while my family clinked wine glasses above me. Dr. Archer continued, Your aunt saved your life, and your strength kept you from slipping under completely. He gave me a faint, kind smile. I'm proud of you. After he left, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Something inside me, something buried beneath years of shrinking myself, shifted slightly. A seed of anger, a seed of dignity, a seed of belief. I was worth saving, I was worth fighting for, and they had tried to erase me anyway. As evening approached, the sky outside dimmed to a soft purple. Firefly-like flakes drifted past the window again. Caroline opened the blinds just enough for me to see. Beautiful, isn't it? She murmured. I blinked once. A soft beauty. A quiet one. Not the cruel, glittering kind that covered broken things. She sat beside me again. There's something else we need to talk about. I breathed shallowly, listening. Your husband, she said carefully. The police told me he asked about visiting. My stomach twisted. Caroline shook her head. I told them no. You are under protective custody. He doesn't get to see you. He forfeited that right. I blinked once firmly. She nodded. Good. I just wanted to be sure. Her voice softened. But Rachel, he might reach out another way. A call. A letter. Even through your parents. You don't owe him a single word. My chest tightened, but not with grief. With clarity. The nurse entered with dinner, bland broth and soft crackers, but I ate slow and steady. Caroline coaxed me through every sip like she was rewiring me back into myself. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and the hospital quieted, another visitor came, surprising both of us. Nora, the victim advocate, returned with a gentle smile. I know it's late, she said softly, but I thought you might want to hear something encouraging. Caroline stepped aside so she could stand closer to the bed. The district attorney reviewed your file, Nora said. With the evidence gathered so far, they are confident the charges will hold. They believe this case is strong. I blinked, heart fluttering lightly. And Rachel, she added gently, you will not face your family alone. We will stand with you. A warm tear slid from the corner of my eye. She placed a small card on the bedside table. This is my direct number. Call any time, day or night. When Nora left, the room felt warmer somehow, less like a sterile hospital space, and more like a cocoon where I was rebuilding piece by piece. Caroline squeezed my hand. You're going to get through this, and we will make sure they can never hurt you again. Outside, snow continued falling, silent, steady, gentle, not dangerous, not deadly. It felt like forgiveness from the sky itself. When I closed my eyes, I didn't see the window breaking or the snow swallowing me. I saw something else. My mother's face in the hallucination, her warmth, her voice saying, someone's coming. And someone did. Not my husband, not my parents, not my sister, but someone who loved me, someone who stayed. For the first time since the fall, I let myself drift toward sleep without fear. The cold was gone, but I was not. 4 days after the fall, the hospital discharged me with a brace around my torso, strict instructions and pain medication strong enough to dull the world at its edges. But the moment I stepped into the crisp air outside the sliding glass doors, bundled in a thick coat Caroline had brought from her house, the cold hit me in a way that made my breath stutter. It wasn't the freezing sting of the night I nearly died. This was gentler, a clean winter chill swept over by sunlight. Yet my body reacted instantly, trembling with a memory it didn't know how to forget. Caroline placed a steadying hand on my back. Easy, she murmured. You're safe. We're going straight home. Home. Not the house I grew up in. Not the place where I'd been pushed out a window and left to die. But Caroline's house, a warm, cluttered, plant-filled little cottage, a half-hour away with quilted blankets folded on the couch, and cinnamon tea always steeping for far too long. A place I had never lived in, but somehow recognized as safe the moment she unlocked the front door. Inside, everything smelled like lavender and old books. The heater hummed softly. Caroline helped me settle into the guest room, fresh sheets, extra pillows, a space heater angled at the foot of the bed. A small lamp glowed beside a stack of novels she'd placed there just in case I wanted something to distract myself. It's not fancy, she said, smoothing the blanket, but it's yours, as long as you need it. I blinked slowly, overwhelmed by gratitude. She sat on the edge of the bed. I'll make soup. Doctor said warm, simple foods only. I nodded, sinking into the pillows as she left the room. For a moment I closed my eyes and let the stillness wash over me. No slamming doors, no raised voices, no footsteps pacing upstairs in irritation. No mirror reflecting a version of myself I could never live up to. Just quiet. And then the knock. The sound startled me enough that my ribs flared with pain. I heard Caroline hurry down the hallway before I could even register the fear rising in my chest. When she opened the front door, her voice turned sharp. Absolutely not. A familiar voice followed, slicing through the thin walls. Caroline, please. I need to see her. Mark. My pulse spiked. No, Caroline snapped. You were ordered not to come near her. I'm her husband, Mark insisted. I have a right. You lost every right the moment you helped drag her upstairs, she said. And even before that, when you cheated on her with her sister. Silence. Then Mark's voice lower. I didn't mean for things to go this far. A bitter laugh from Caroline. You mean you didn't expect it to blow up in your faces? He said something quieter, too soft for me to hear. Caroline stepped outside, closing the door until only a sliver of sound reached me. I strained to listen, but stopped. I didn't want to hear him. I didn't want his voice threading through this new quiet place, contaminating it the way he had slowly contaminated my life. I didn't want to hear excuses from someone who looked at me lying in the snow and thought closing the curtains was the solution. Caroline returned a minute later, cheeks flushed with fury. He's gone, she said simply. He tried to claim he wanted to apologize. I told him if he cared about you, he'd follow the court order and stay away. My breath trembled. Relief, fear, a complicated ache. He's not allowed back, ever, she added, and I'm installing cameras outside the house just in case. The rest of the day passed quietly. Caroline brought soup tea and a heating pad. I slept on and off, waking whenever pain shifted, or when memories surfaced in quick, sharp flashes. That night, the nightmares came. I woke gasping, chest tight, convinced for a moment that I was still lying in the snow, that the cold pressing against my back wasn't a mattress but ice. Caroline burst into the room when she heard me cry out, sitting beside me and holding my hand until my breathing slowed. It's trauma, she whispered. It takes time. The next morning, 2 detectives arrived to take a formal statement, this time at Caroline's house, with pillows behind me and a blanket wrapped around my legs. Officer Reyes spoke gently. We don't need every detail right now. Just what you can remember. I blinked once to indicate I understood. The recounting was harder than I expected. My throat tightened each time I tried to form a memory into a shape sharp enough to describe. Instead, I closed my eyes and lifted my fingers, answering yes or no with small movements. Reyes guided me through it with patience that made the process bearable. Did your sister push you? She asked. A nod. Did your husband restrain you beforehand? Another nod. Did your parents come outside or attempt to help you after the fall? A long, painful shake of my head. How long do you estimate you were in the snow? I breathed shallowly. 2 to 3 hours, Reyes suggested softly. A nod. When they finished, Reyes placed a reassuring hand on the back of the couch. You're incredibly strong, she said, and you've survived something most people wouldn't. When they left, Caroline brought over her laptop. We need to talk about what comes next, she said. Legally and practically. I braced. First, she said, you're going to need a lawyer, someone who specializes in domestic violence and attempted homicide cases. I've already contacted 2 highly recommended ones. I blinked in surprise. She smiled faintly. You didn't think I was going to let you handle this alone, did you? Tears pricked my eyes. I shook my head. Second, she continued, you need financial support while you heal. I know you don't like taking help, but this is different. You have medical bills, lost wages, and your apartment is still in Seattle. We'll figure it out. I hesitated, but then nodded. Because she was right, and because I finally understood that accepting help didn't make me weak. It made me human. And third, she said softly, when you're ready, we need to talk about your mom. My breath hitched. The things she told me before she died, Caroline added. I want you to know everything. But not today. I nodded. That evening, something unexpected arrived through the mail slot, an envelope with my name on it. I froze when Caroline placed it on the table. It's from your parents, she said quietly. My stomach twisted. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Rachel. We hope you understand that this has all been very difficult for us. We didn't know how to react that night. Your behavior was upsetting and Haley panicked. We thought you needed space. We didn't realize things were so serious until it was too late. We don't want the family torn apart over misunderstandings. Please call us once you've calmed down. Mom and Dad. The paper crinkled under my grip as my breath turned shaky. Misunderstandings. The word ignited something inside me. I didn't know I still had rage. Not uncontrolled rage, not the kind that shattered or broke. A quiet, razor-sharp anger that cut through years of conditioning. Caroline took the letter and set it aside. They're trying to manipulate the narrative, she said. Don't let them. I leaned back slowly, my ribs aching, but for the first time since waking up in the hospital, I felt something stronger than fear. Clarity. They don't get access to you anymore, Caroline said. Not to your mind, your time, or your healing. I blinked in agreement. Before she left the room, she looked at me with something close to wonder. You survived your family, she whispered. Do you understand how powerful that makes you? I didn't, not fully. Not yet. But later, as I lay in bed staring at the soft glow of the lamp, I realized something. The cold had not broken me. The fall had not ended me. Their silence had not erased me. I was still here. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn anyone's love or approval. I was trying to live. 2 weeks after the trial ended, Seattle's sharp spring rain tapped against the clinic windows as I sat with a pen in my hand and a blank intake form in front of me. It was supposed to be my first full day assisting with trauma counseling, my first day stepping into a role built from the broken pieces of the life I had survived. But my fingers trembled slightly above the paper. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was the echo of a life still reshaping itself like a bone learning how to bear weight again after a long break. Caroline watched me from the doorway, arms folded gently, a soft smile tugging her lips. You don't have to be perfect today, she said. You just have to be here. Her voice grounded me more than the warm light or the quiet hum of the clinic ever could. I took a slow breath, let it settle in my ribs, and finally pressed the pen to the paper. The first patient arrived 10 minutes later, a woman with tired eyes and a faded hoodie wringing her hands as she entered. She didn't look at me at first. Most survivors didn't on their first visit. I recognized her posture, the quiet shrinking, the careful steps of someone who had learned that being seen meant being hurt. But then she lifted her gaze and met mine. Something in her expression shifted. Maybe she recognized the survivor's stillness inside me. Maybe she sensed I wasn't there as an expert towering over her, but as someone who had once lain in snow waiting for help that never came. By the time she left, she had told me pieces of her story. Not all of it. Just the parts she could bear to say aloud. When she thanked me near the door, her voice cracked. You actually listened, she whispered. I nodded, though emotion burned behind my ribs. You deserve to be heard. When the door closed, I leaned back in my chair and pressed a hand to my chest. My heart felt stretched, warm, full, like a bruise turning into something else, something stronger. By lunchtime, I had met 3 more patients. Each story different, but threaded with the same fibers: fear, loyalty used as a weapon, the exhaustion of living on alert, and the small spark inside each of them refusing to be extinguished. That spark had saved me. And now, somehow, impossibly, I was helping others find theirs. But the day wasn't done with me yet. Near the end of my shift, the clinic director, Dr. Keaton, knocked on my office door. You're doing beautifully, she said, stepping inside. But I thought you should know your sister filed for visitation consideration through the mediation board. Not legal visitation, just a petition to contact you. My stomach tightened. Haley. Of course she would try to find a loophole after the court barred her from contacting me directly. She had always believed rules bent for her. She had always twisted consequences into inconveniences designed to punish her rather than protect others. What did the board say? I asked, my voice steady, even as heat crept into my palms. Dr. Keaton sat opposite me. They denied it before it even reached review. Given the criminal case, the restraining order, and your statement, they flagged her request as inappropriate. I nodded relief, mingling with a strange sadness I didn't expect. Sadness not because I wanted her back in my life, but because there had been a time long before the drinking, the lies, and the cruelty, when I would have given anything to have a sister who loved me. Someone who didn't weaponize my vulnerabilities against me. But she had made her choices, and I had survived them. "Thank you for telling me," I said softly. Dr. Keaton reached for my hand. "You're not obligated to reopen wounds for anyone, not even family." When she left the room, I sat quietly for a long moment. Rain streaked down the window, soft and steady, like the world whispering something gentle I hadn't been ready to hear until now. Family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who warms your coldest winters. I packed my things and stepped outside into the misty air, pulling my coat tighter around my shoulders. The pavement shimmered beneath the streetlights. My breath fogged the air in soft white puffs, reminding me of another night when the cold had nearly claimed me. But this time, as I walked toward the bus stop, I wasn't afraid of the cold. It no longer had the power to swallow me whole. When I arrived home, Caroline was in the living room assembling a piece of furniture with instructions spread across the floor like a puzzle. She looked up when she heard the door. "How was today?" she asked. I set my bag down and leaned against the wall. "Hard, good, both." She grinned. "Perfect. That means you're doing it right." I laughed, really laughed for the first time that day. "What are you building?" "A bookshelf," she said, waving a screwdriver. "Your books were starting to take over the coffee table. Survivors deserve storage." "My books," I repeated, smiling at the way she said it. Caroline stood, wiped her hands on her jeans, and walked over to me. "I'm proud of you." Her words washed over me like warmth after months in the cold. We spent the next hour assembling the bookshelf, arguing playfully about which side the screws belonged on, laughing whenever one of us accidentally installed a panel backward. When we finally slid it upright against the wall, I felt something settle deep inside me. A quiet rightness. Later that evening, I sat on my bed with a cup of ginger tea, scrolling through emails from the clinic. That was when I saw it, an unread message with a subject line that made my breath still. Update regarding offender status notification. My fingertips went cold. I clicked the email open. "This message is to inform you that the offender Mark Sutton has been transferred to a long-term holding facility pending extended sentencing review and behavioral evaluation. The offender remains barred from all contact." For a long moment, I didn't move. Then, unexpectedly, I let out a shaky breath I didn't know I'd been holding on to for months. The fear I had carried like an invisible weight loosened further. The world felt a little wider, a little safer. I put the laptop aside and lay back against my pillows. Safe. A word I'd never truly understood until now. My phone buzzed on the bedside table. I reached for it, expecting a message from Caroline or the clinic. Instead, the notification made my heart pause. "Unknown number. I'm sorry." I froze. No, it couldn't be. The restraining order was active. The offender notification system said he had no contact privileges, and Haley would never apologize, not in any universe. My lungs tightened as I stared at the glowing screen. Then another message appeared. "I'm sorry about everything." My pulse thudded against my ribs. I swallowed hard, fought the trembling in my fingers, and opened the message thread. And then, unexpectedly, a third message. "This is Lily, your cousin." I heard what really happened. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry we didn't help you. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner." Lily, the only person in my family who wasn't born cruel, but who had been raised in the shadows of people who were. My breath eased. A moment later, another message appeared. "If you don't want me to contact you again, I understand. I just needed you to know I'm trying to be better. I'm getting counseling. I didn't want to become like them." Tears blurred the screen. I typed slowly, carefully. "Thank you for telling me. I'm glad you're getting help. Take care of yourself." I didn't add more. I didn't ask about my sister or my parents. I didn't open a door I wasn't ready to walk through. I simply acknowledged her sincerity and let it end there. After I set the phone aside, silence filled the room, not heavy or frightening, but peaceful. Healing wasn't linear. It wasn't clean. It wasn't something I could schedule on a calendar. But it was happening. Slowly, steadily, like muscles rebuilding after months of atrophy. And maybe my story could help someone else rebuild too. A soft knock came at my door. Caroline peeked in. Tea refill. Or do you want to watch something stupid until we fall asleep mid-sentence? I smiled. Both. She laughed. Excellent choice. As she walked in with a blanket draped over one shoulder, I felt it again, that quiet rightness blooming in the center of my chest. I had lost a family, but I had found my people, found my path, found myself. And somehow, impossibly beautifully, I had survived. I wasn't healing from something anymore. I was healing into someone new. Spring melted into early summer with a gentleness I had never noticed in the Pacific Northwest before. Maybe the world had always held this softness, and I had simply never been free enough to feel it. My spine ached less each week. My fingers moved with more certainty during my shifts at the trauma clinic, and every morning I woke with a steady calm that still felt new, like a language I was slowly learning to speak. One warm Saturday, I stood at the edge of a local park overlooking the Sound, its waters glinting beneath the late afternoon sun. Caroline jogged a few paces ahead, waving for me to catch up. "Come on," she called, laughing. "You're walking like you're 80. I rolled my eyes but sped up, careful with my footing. "Some of us have spinal fractures, remember." She jogged backward, now grinning. "Some of us also have doctor's orders to walk more. A slow walk," I reminded her. She smirked. "This is slow." I shook my head, but I felt a laugh rising in my chest. These were the kinds of moments I once believed life had stolen from me forever, moments defined by nothing more than breath, sunlight, and the presence of someone who cared. As we walked, families picnicked under maple trees, dogs chased tennis balls in sprawling arcs, and somewhere nearby a child's kite fluttered against the blue sky like a bright heartbeat. The world felt unscarred, unbroken. Or perhaps it felt whole simply because I was learning to feel whole again. We found a bench facing the water and sat down, the wood warm beneath us. Caroline handed me a bottle of iced tea, her cheeks flushed from exertion. "I talked to the clinic director this morning," she said casually, though her tone hinted she was leading into something bigger. "She wants you to consider stepping into a partial case management role." I blinked. Case management. "You're already doing it," she said. "Survivors trust you. They open up to you. You connect them to resources before anyone even asks. She thinks you're ready for a little more responsibility." My heart gave a soft thud. Not fear, something gentler, like the settling of a puzzle piece. "I don't know," I said quietly. "I feel like I've only just found my footing." Caroline nudged my shoulder. "Finding your footing is exactly why you're ready. You're not reacting from trauma anymore, you're responding from experience." I stared at the water, letting her words sink into me. A few months ago, I could barely get out of bed without bracing myself for the echo of a nightmare. Now someone believed I was capable of shepherding others through their own darkness. The truth was, I wanted to say yes. I did feel ready. Or rather, I felt ready to keep growing even if the path wasn't perfectly clear. "I'll think about it," I whispered. "That's all she asked for," Caroline said, leaning back against the bench. "And it's all I'm asking for, too." A soft breeze rustled the leaves above us. Somewhere behind us, the faint sound of a guitarist drifted through the air. When I closed my eyes, the sunlight pressed warm patterns across my eyelids. This peace wasn't something I waited for anymore. It was something I built. We left the park an hour later, stopping at a small cafe along the waterfront that smelled like cinnamon and roasting coffee beans. The barista, a young woman with shaved hair and a silver nose ring, smiled knowingly at Caroline. They'd memorized our usual order by now, lavender iced latte for her, ginger peach tea for me. We sat outside on the patio, watching sailboats drift across the bay. Just as I took my first sip, my phone buzzed. For a beat, my body stiffened, old reflexes dying hard. But when I glanced at the screen, my pulse eased. A notification from the Victim Liaison Office. Status update. Offender has been transferred to a long-term rehabilitation program with no eligibility for early communication privileges. All no-contact orders remain active. No further action required. A slow breath escaped me. Relief not sharp or overwhelming but steady like a tide finally receding from the shore. Caroline watched my face. Good news. Yes, I whispered. Really good. For the first time since that night in the snow, I felt the last remaining thread of fear dissolve completely. He could not touch my life anymore. None of them could. I was free not just legally, not just physically, but emotionally. Caroline reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Good, she said softly. You deserve every peaceful morning from here on out. When we got home, the sun had dipped low enough to paint the apartments in soft gold. I changed into comfortable clothes and stepped out onto the balcony, breathing in the faint scent of salt from the bay. Margaret's potted herbs lined the railing, basil, rosemary, sage thriving under her careful care. She had returned to Alaska for a short visit with friends, but she would be back next month. I missed her already. Her presence in my life felt like a lighthouse, steady, warm, unwavering. I picked a leaf of basil between my fingers, rubbing it gently until its scent filled the air. Mom, I whispered into the quiet. Look how far I've come. The city glowed beneath me like a living heartbeat full of stories and people and futures unfolding. And for once, mine felt wide open. Inside my laptop chimed with a new email. I glanced at it as I walked past the dining table, a message from a local community center, asking if I would be willing to speak at their annual Survivors Forum in the fall. The idea made my stomach flutter. Tell my story, speak it aloud publicly. I wasn't sure I could, but maybe someday I would. For now, it was enough just to be asked. As evening settled, Caroline and I cooked dinner together. Well, she cooked, and I chopped vegetables slowly, deliberately, as my physical therapist insisted. We ate on the balcony, watching the sky shift into a dusky lavender. You know, she said between bites, you're allowed to start planning for things again. I looked up. What do you mean? She smiled. Dreams, goals, a life you want. Not the life you escaped from, not the life you survived, but the life you choose. A warmth unfurled inside me. I don't even know where to start. That's the beautiful part, she said. You get to start anywhere. Later, after the dishes were washed and the apartment quieted, I curled up with a blanket and opened the journal my therapist had encouraged me to keep. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "What do I want the next year of my life to look like?" At first, my mind offered nothing. Then, slowly like flowers opening to the sun, words emerged. A stable home, work that matters, people who feel safe, moments of joy without guilt, the courage to keep choosing myself. A life defined by the warmth I build, not the cold I survived. The list felt right. True. Mine. I closed the journal, rested my head on the back of the couch, and let myself simply breathe. The fall through the window would always be part of my story, but it was no longer the defining chapter. It was the hinge, the turning point, the moment that cracked everything open so the light could finally enter. I survived that night. But more importantly, I rose from it. If someone had told me, then lying in the snow with frost forming on my lashes, that one day I would feel this whole, this steady, this free, I wouldn't have believed them. But here I was, alive, healing, becoming. And as I sat there wrapped in soft light and quiet peace, I realized something else. My story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. If you've listened this far, if you've walked through the cold and the healing with me, thank you. If you've ever carried a story of survival in your own heart, I hope you know this: you're stronger than the worst thing that ever happened to you, and you deserve the peace waiting on the other side of the storm. Share your thoughts below. Tell me where you're listening from, or which part of this journey resonated with you. And if you want more stories like this, stories of courage, resilience, and the warmth we rebuild, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay with me for the next chapter. I'll be here, and I hope you will be too.